Strongman is a brutal sport, and it doesn't matter what level you're competing at, there are injuries that are going to happen. And I've had more than most. So today we're going to take a look at my worst injuries and rank them from least painful to the absolute most brutal. So when rating these injuries, we're going to take a look at a few factors. It's not always that they're the most brutally painful when they happen. Some of them are more of a shock, and the rehab is what gets affected or how I perform in the future. So there's a few things that we're going to look at. And we're starting off way back in 2007, Britain's Strongest Man, where I suffered a bicep tear on the tire flip. I don't even think I sound like this when I watch this back.
I just heard a rip in my bicep.
But the bicep tear is a common injury that we see in Strongman. I was doing the tire flip here at this competition, and this was a big moment for me, trying to get to my first World's Strongest Man. It was the first Britain's Strongest Man final I made. This is back when they ran Britain's like World's Strongest Man. And as I went to flip this tire, I just felt this ripping sensation in the bicep. It didn't actually hurt at the time. It's a strange feeling tearing a bicep because you don't feel much pain. You just know your arm's gone and it's not working. And being in a big competition for me, it was my first ever injury. It was a big mental blow. However, recovery from the bicep isn't the worst. For people that get surgery, normally 3 to 6 months, they're back training and back performing at the very top level. For me, it took about 4 or 5 months. I didn't actually have surgery. I spoke about having surgery, and back then it wasn't a common injury, and there was concern that I could lose supination of my hand. However, it's not affected my career too much. I went on to achieve some big results. So for me, this injury is pretty low on the scale. So next on our list is a calf tear that I suffered in the final of the World's Strongest Man in 2016. We were doing a frame carry, really good event for me normally. You could see starting off, I was doing pretty well. I think I was in second place behind Mateusz Kiliszkowski, who is also excellent at this type of event. And really that's where I should be looking to finish. First or second on this type of event was pretty consistent for me. However, on the way back, it felt like I got bitten by a snake in my calf. It just kind of threw me down to the ground, tried to pick up the frame again. As soon as I took a step, I just felt that excruciating pain in the calf. And like I said, sometimes when you get the initial tear, it doesn't hurt, but then when I tried to pick it up again, that's when suddenly you feel the pain and your leg's not working how you want it to. Very, very disappointing to be in the final, first event, and suffer an injury. Now, my first World's Strongest Man back in 2008, massive experience for me. I wanted to give absolutely everything. And I did pretty well on the first event, and then going into the second event, which was the truck pull, I was pretty good, I was going well, and then halfway down the course, I just felt this pop in my foot. My toe, big toe, got dislocated, but I just kind of kept grinding it out, kept pushing as far as I can, and I came within a fraction of finishing the distance. To be in this big event for the first time and then suffer an injury seemed to happen to me a lot at these certain competitions, but the big toe wasn't a major issue for me. I managed to finish the competition. It was painful. That was the real kind of thing that I had to cope with, was the discomfort, but a dislocated toe isn't such a serious injury. We managed to pop it back in, and then it's just coping with the swelling and going through the rest of the competition. The next event was the squat, which I ended up winning. And I was a whisker away from making the final, ended up doing the stones, and it was the famous stones where Harold Haugen finishes them super fast. He's jumped up onto the top platform, and I'm still there doing the third stone, but managed to finish the competition. Was in discomfort, but certainly not the worst injury by any means. The 2013 squat event at the World's Strongest Man was exceptionally heavy. I was in a tough group, and we only had 4 athletes that managed to get a rep. 2 guys zeroed. We had 2 athletes on 1 rep, one of those including Hafthor Bjornsson, and then in second place we had Robert Oberst with 2 reps. I ended up doing 9 repetitions and tearing my quad on the 10th rep. And there's been a lot of controversy with this in the past. People saying, why were you showing off? Why did you try and push to 10 reps? Now, to clear my name on this, I was asked by the producers to not just do 3 reps. They offered me some money for each rep that I did. And I was coming into this competition with a bit of a shoulder injury. I thought I could make some money on the squat. I thought I could do 10 reps. Coming up on the 10th rep, my quad blew out. Absolutely gutted, disappointed, And a lesson learned from this one. I never made the same mistake again. Would always just do what I needed to do in the future. However, very, very painful injury, especially when you've got that much weight on your back. For the quad to blow out, you just go down to the floor like a sack of potatoes. It's very, very scary. Again, you hear that loud kind of popping noise in your head. People by the side can hear it. Very uncomfortable, lots of swelling, lots of bruising, and luckily no tendons were torn, so it was just muscular tear, which again I was a bit lucky with. That can recover much, much quicker, but at the time, absolutely devastating. So 2012, I was competing at a Strongman Champions League in China. We had to do a dumbbell event. It started raining, they started to rush people through it. I probably should have, or certainly later in my career, if I was in that situation, I would have learned to say stop. At the time, naive, I kind of wanted to impress the promoters and people who come to watch. I went out, rushed the dumbbell. It was slipping on my shoulder. I kind of didn't have it sat right. Tried to press it, came out of position, ended up tearing my labrum. Now, again, at the time, not the most painful injury that I've had in terms of instantly happening. However, one of the hardest injuries to recover from. After this injury, my pressing was never the same. I suffered in terms of power output, stability in the shoulder, and I don't think I ever lifted more after that injury in an overhead event. So it certainly affected my career moving forwards. I managed to get back to a decent level, developing more strict pressing power, but I really lost a lot of explosive ability. Certainly an injury that definitely cost me ability, took time to recover, and certainly a nasty one. So this next one is quite a famous one. Same day that Eddie Hall dropped the world record deadlift. I was probably in the best deadlifting shape of my life. Went out there, pulled 435 kilos, the best 435 kilo lift of my life. The next jump was 446 kilos. It was coming up, and suddenly you hear a pop in my lat. You can see from the side angle, I was a little bit leaner at the time, so you get a good vision of just the muscle ripping. Very, very nasty injury. Devastating because I was at the strongest I've ever been. I believe that day I could have matched Eddie in terms of deadlifting. Again, never managed to get myself back to that level after this injury. My deadlift was never the same. I have tried, I've got to an okay level, but it was so hard to get beyond what I did on that competition and that performance. We actually, as a family, went on holiday a few days later, and I was bruised up all over. I looked like I'd been in a wars. Probably very, very weird for people. Nasty injury. Again, in terms of pain at the time, very uncomfortable, just kind of coping with the pain and the swelling that comes from it. A few days later, it gets more and more swollen, becomes more and more painful. Traveling is difficult in those situations. And just because I could never get back to my best in terms of deadlifting, it has to rank fairly high on this list. So this one's a pretty tough one for me to watch for many reasons. I don't like to kind of talk critical, but World's Strongest Man had the Fingles Fingers, and they decided they were going to try a new event called the Norse Hammer. Did not test this properly. They were supposed to have 5 of these hammers. They ended up cutting it down to 3 because they were so hard. A lot of athletes couldn't even do one. I flipped the first one, no problem. I was on the second hammer, and as I kind of lifted it, felt a pull in my bicep. Tried to ignore it, kept going, and then suddenly as I'm pushing through this hammer, my tricep goes. The hammer comes down onto me, smashes me to the floor. I was very lucky to get away with just a torn tricep and a strain in the other bicep. This event was brutal. Only one person, I think, managed to do the 3 that they set out, which was Thor Bjornsson, who is amazing at these type of events. But a lot of athletes were getting injured. And I think because I had worked so hard to come back from other injuries, mentally this was a very, very tough one. And it was a point in my career where I almost gave up. And for a short time, I did give up. Difficult trying to come back from a tricep tear. It takes time. You really, a lot of these injuries, you can get back to an okay level within 6 months, but to really get back to your best, often it takes about 2 years, and it really can impact your ability to be at the maximum performance on some events. Yes, you can get to 80%, but getting yourself back to 100% and beyond, very, very difficult. having this huge hammer knock me down to the floor was very painful. And just the emotional torture that I kind of gone through to try and build myself back up to this position, and then to feel it was all for nothing. Very, very hard. You can see in the video how disappointed I was. Liz was with me, and you know, she was, I wanted to kind of be, I wanted to disappear at the time. I didn't want to be around anyone. I felt like I'd let so many people down. And it was just a combination of the emotional effect as well as the physical pain that just got to me on this one. So that was a rough one to watch. That is the injury that really finished me off. Ended my career. And on my best event, can you believe it? The super yoke, something I broke multiple world records in. Unfortunately, this one was too much. The Achilles is a nasty injury. Kevin Ferris told me that he could hear it. There was people at the side that said they could hear it. It was like a gun going off. Instant pain, instantly kind of sent to the floor like a sack of shit. I felt absolutely devastated in that point. You know, it was my last World's Strongest Man. Regardless, I wanted to go out on a good performance. Unfortunately, it wasn't to be. I did manage to come back and do a Giants Live as a farewell competition a couple of years later, which was great, and that went really well. But this was the injury that stopped my career more than anything else. I had a great career. Obviously, you can see I had a lot of injuries, and that is part and parcel of Strongman. And there's things that I've learned from these injuries, and that's something I kind of want to make sure you guys understand as well. Is yes, injuries happen, and sometimes we have to be prepared for that. If you want to do this sport, you have to accept it. However, learning to make sure you are hydrated, making sure you're eating well, warming up properly, all these things can help prevent injuries. But there are moments where you can do all the things right and still things will go wrong. It is a high risk sport, and it is important that you understand that. But when you do get injured, remember that you can come back. Even though I had a lot of these injuries, I managed to come back time and time again and win massive, massive shows. I won the Ultimate Strongman World Championships. I won Europe's Strongest Man. I won multiple Giants Lives, Champions League shows, Britain's Strongest Man, UK Strongest Man, managed to break records even coming back from these injuries. So it shows you that injuries are, as hard as they are to cope with at the time, you can come back, you can learn from them, you can be better. There's many things that I've learned from these injuries. As I said, all those kind of important things when it comes to preventing them. Things as simple as improving your sleep. I suffered with sleep apnea, didn't really realize at the time. Sleep apnea actually makes you dehydrated. So these were things that I learned and have kind of implemented to my clients now to make sure they prevent themselves picking up some of the injuries that I picked up. I hope you find this video a little bit entertaining and informative. Not my most fun one to do, I'll be honest with you guys, but hopefully it can help some of you out there. As I said, I've had some nasty injuries. There are other injuries as well that are less important to talk about, but you can come back from them. Do not let an injury just finish you off completely. Obviously, 2019, it was my last Worlds anyway. It wasn't how I wanted to go out. It was a nasty one to come back from. But I'm still training now. I'm doing other things, pursuing other areas, and still love getting in the gym. Hope you enjoyed the video, guys. Don't forget, like, share, and subscribe to the channel, and I'll catch you guys next time.